Now this place is beautiful, the water turquoise, the sand is white, and it's safe. It's definitely a paradise, and in the US. Would the US Virgin Islands be your retirement destination? Hello everyone, this is Ronan Blue, and if you're new to this channel, welcome. This channel is all about how my girlfriend and I achieved financial independence and debt freedom 2 years back since paying off our mortgage. With my newfound freedom, I talk about how we made it happen, the types of passive income we have that anyone could implement, our thoughts of early retirement overseas, personal thoughts, and general financial issues. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our weekly content full of information helping you get to financial independence yourself. Today's topic would be on the 8 best reasons to retire to the US Virgin Islands. Just as a disclaimer, the information provided is a general guide and to be used for educational purposes only. The US Virgin Islands is a great place to move if you're looking for a Caribbean lifestyle while still living under the protection of the American flag, but let's look at some of the points that could make it possible. Number 1. Culture on the US Virgin Islands. Historians document that the first inhabitants, the Cebuanese, arrived on the islands during what is considered a pre-ceramic culture, and many others came afterwards around 100 AD. But the best known inhabitants were the Caribs and the Taínos. In 1493, Christopher Columbus landed on an island and named it Santa Cruz, but was first driven away by the Carib Indians. But when Christopher Columbus sailed into Salt River in 1493, there was another battle that ended with claiming the islands for Spain. But many countries expressed interest in the islands in the 1600s, including Holland, France, England, Spain, Denmark, and the Knights of Malta. But it was the Danes that established the first settlement on St. Thomas in 1672, expanding to St. John in 1694. The country lies 70 miles east of Puerto Rico in the Lesser Antilles of the Caribbean, and is composed of 3 large and 50 small islands totaling 136 square miles or 352 square kilometers. It wasn't a very well-known place until World War I, when the United States realized their strategic position and negotiated the price of the islands from Denmark for $25 million in gold. Although the islands were purchased in 1917, it wasn't until 1927 that citizenship was granted to Virgin Islanders. Interestingly enough, today, American citizens in the US Virgin Islands can't elect voting members to Congress or vote for the President of the United States. Tourism grew in the destination once the United States imposed an embargo on Cuba in 1959. Today, the USVI is a thriving destination for visitors in search of the perfect vacation. The Virgin Islands is an interesting mix between Caribbean and American cultures, but the majority of the natives could trace their ancestry to Europe and Africa. The population in US Virgin Islands hovers around 108,612 people. Many of the Americans who are part of the population are those who grew tired of living on the mainland and decided to live life on the island. English is the main language in the USVI, and the majority of the population speak, write, and read English only. Number 2. Places to live in the US Virgin Islands. When thinking of living in the US Virgin Islands, many think of the 3 separate islands, each with their different personalities. Let's look at some of the islands now. St. John. St. John, being the smallest, is actually a half national park, the US Virgin Islands National Park, which adds a laid-back and peacefulness to it. The island offers a slow pace of living and is home to a small community of about 4,800 people. Rockefeller actually fell in love with St. John and purchased more than half. He actually built himself a secluded retreat and donated the remaining 5,000 acres to the government to keep in trust. There are plenty of places to live in this area in the comfort of your own privacy. St. Croix. St. Croix is actually the largest island with great scenery and many historic sites. It has mountains and forests, as well as the beautiful white sandy beaches along the shoreline. It's only 28 miles long and 7 miles wide, and it's a more isolated location and is often referred to as the Quiet Virgin. A variety of the past still exists. Vehicles travel on the left side of the road, and the Victorian and Danish colonial buildings dot the countryside. It's home to diversification in people, culture, architecture, and history. It has flat agricultural land to rolling hills, arid areas to lush vegetation, countryside settings to dramatic sea views. The diversity of the island is reflected in the real estate market. Properties of all types can be found on St. Croix, including high-end houses, fixer-uppers, condos, commercial properties, and underdeveloped land. St. Thomas. St. Thomas has beautiful beaches as well, and many of the cruise ships dock here. It's the capital of the islands and is a favorite with lovely resorts and plenty of shopping. It's the busiest and most densely populated of the 3 main US Virgin Islands, an American paradise with the delicious food, diverse shopping, lively nightlife, and abundant attractions bring visitors from all over the US and the world. Within 50 square miles, there are many surprising attractions you could do in your retirement. You can go deep sea fishing or ride on the self-drive powerboat or explore the landmarks of historic downtown, learn about sea creatures, or just soak up the sun at one of the legendary beaches. You can also enjoy snorkeling, sailing, and diving that is part of life here. There's also a world-famous golf course for you to enjoy. There are also hundreds of stores with some of the best bargains in the Caribbean, and there are native arts and craft galleries, antique stores, clothing boutiques, and local favorites, and the farmers market. Number 3. Food in the US Virgin Islands. Caribbean cuisine on the islands is heavily influenced by the long history of previous inhabitants, creating a fusion of West African, European, and Danish flavors. But let's look at some of the foods offered. Snacking on pâtés. These are fried dough pockets stuffed with spiced chicken, beef, and saltfish. It's much like an empanada stuffed into a pocket of pastry dough and then deep fried to golden perfection. You can buy these puffs warm from street stalls or bakeries. They are delicious, portable, and you can enjoy one while relaxing on a beach. Spinach is often used as the base, stirred with okra, various meats, onions, thyme, and hot peppers. Lobster. You can treat yourself to some Caribbean lobster in a beachfront setting. The reefs around the Virgin Islands have massive crustaceans. They are called anageta lobsters, and the meat is in the tail. Lobsters in the Virgin Island are often grilled and served with melted garlic butter or mixed in with rice or soup. It could be with coconut as well. They are usually served sliced in half on a plate with the juicy meat facing up. Roti. Now there are many Indian-influenced rotis. Rotis are burrito-like flatbread wraps. They could be filled with anything from sweet to savory and meat-filled or vegetarian. Curried chicken, beef, goat, or chickpeas are plump. They could be for lunch or dinner as well. It could be very spicy as well. Number 4. Things to do in the US Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands is known to be one of the most beautiful parts of the US, although Hurricane Irma destroyed a lot of the scenery that made this place so special. It has since been recovering, but it's still a beautiful destination to see and do things at. You can of course check out all the beaches, but there are other things to do besides swimming and sunbathing, like hiking the nature trail, kayaking, paddle boating, and sailboat rentals. Diving. Now there are many dive shops that will take you to beautiful underwater dive sites. You can even get a certificate as well. You can even rent an underwater submersible scooter, which requires no diving experience at all. You can also see a lot of marine life and view life on a coral reef. You can also go to shark pools or hand feed a stingray. You can also swim with the sea lions. Sailing. The waters of the Virgin Islands are known as some of the best sailing waters in the world. Most sailing yachts leave from St. Thomas, and most of the boats offer drinks, lunch, water toys, snorkel gear, and instruction. Number 5. Cost of living in the US Virgin Islands. Living in America's major cities is already expensive, and it seems that city costs of living are only getting worse. Unfortunately, the Virgin Islands is no exception. It actually has the 9th highest rent in the country out of 56 states and territories. The rent in the Virgin Islands ranges from $970 for a 2-bedroom apartment on St. Croix to $1,523 for a 2-bedroom unit on St. John. The rent on St. John for a studio or efficiency apartment is $1,034 per month and $2,059 per month to rent a house or an apartment with 4 bedrooms. Based on Numbeo, rent prices in the US Virgin Islands are 15.14% higher than in the United States. Restaurant prices in the US Virgin Islands are 25.41% higher than in the United States. Grocery prices in the US Virgin Islands are 33.49% higher than in the United States. Many of its people are struggling to afford bare minimum needs, and the total cost of living in US Virgin Islands for 2 people with average consumption for 1 month will be $1,427 USD per month with no rent price included. A meal at an inexpensive restaurant would be $32 between $25 and $40. A meal for 2 people at a mid-range restaurant for a 3-course meal would be $72 between $70 and $75 USD. Basic utilities would be $312 between $100 and $536 USD per month. The internet would be $87 between $80 and $95 USD per month. Number 6. Buy property in the US Virgin Islands. Now there are no restrictions on foreign property ownership, and buying real estate in the Virgin Islands is the same as buying in the US. All building materials, even concrete, have to be imported from St. Thomas. Homes must also be built to withstand wind speeds of 110 miles per hour, and every dwelling is required to have a septic tank and a cistern. These two items alone account for 10% of the total building costs, which drives starting prices to at least $300 per square foot. Buying property here, you're still on US soil, so the real estate process is largely the same. The biggest difference is that an attorney, not a title company, handles the closing. But if you're ready to start living here, the prices are not going to be as high as you think to get a decent place. You can find a 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood on the island for about $250,000. That usually includes a view of the water. You can also go with the luxury option if your budget can afford it. Housing in a gated community with a private beach can be over $1 million when looking for a 4-bedroom home. You can also get financing through local banks. There are also real estate agents on each island, and insurance companies are available to protect your investment. Beachfront properties are minimal when you start looking for a home, however. Commercial development is a priority along the beaches. That means that having a home right on the water is virtually impossible. The mountains of the island provide opportunities if you want, with numerous condo complexes offering an opportunity to purchase or rent. Property taxes can be high for some individuals. The property taxes imposed on real estate could be 1.25% of the assessed value. There are also capital gains brackets that you'll need to consider when moving here, depending on how you generate income. That includes rental income, which gets taxed at a flat rate of 10% and is withheld by the tenant. You will also be taxed on your global income, not just what you earn from your work on the island. Number 7. Healthcare in the US Virgin Islands. Now, there is Medicare coverage in the US Virgin Islands, and there are healthcare clinics around the islands to treat small injuries, but for annual exams or anything major, many go to St. Thomas. If you live on a separate island, you'll need to take a ferry or helicopter depending on your emergency. The quality of care is pretty much equal to that of the mainland US, so there isn't a lot to talk about like I do in my other vlogs for this area. Number 8. How to live in the US Virgin Islands. Now, there may be a lot of different reasons why you want to make the Virgin Islands your home. It could be because you were offered a job or because you paid a visit to the island and liked it and wanted to make it your home in the future. If you're from the US, you won't need any documents to fill out for work visas. You'll be able to freely travel and work in the USVI, but it's best to carry all of your IDs though. If you hold a degree or certification, you can check the classifieds and call around for jobs related to your specialization. The islands have legal, educational, governmental, business, postal, and health services, just as most places in the US. You can secure a job before you move and save up enough to find one when you get there. Just know that the job market is always open for people with the skills and determination to work hard. But some do say because of the higher cost of living, they end up working more hours, facing more stress for the benefits they would get from living in island paradise. But it may be possible to start your own business or start a side hustle like teaching yoga. Keeping that open mind may get you in adapting to what's popular in island living, like driving a boat as part of a tour or becoming a real estate agent, so there are outside of the box options. If you're not from the US, you'll need to get a resident alien status, work visa, student visa, or a temporary visa, just like you would need to on the main island. It's the same federal immigration regulations that exist in the US mainland is also in use in the Virgin Islands. Retirement and seasonal living is a big option for many older and retired couples. Even younger, more financially stable couples use a USVI as a seasonal home. Some use timeshare and private homelands for persons on the mainland who seek retirement or seasonal living in the USVI. Permanent retirement in the islands is also an option. But as a bonus section, let's look at some of the pros and cons for living in the US Virgin Islands, starting with the pros. If you decide to start living here, then you'll be living in US territory, and as such you'll be getting the same protection you would back on the mainland. You'll also be receiving mail from the US Postal Service, but you won't be living in a state. So as mentioned earlier, you won't need a work visa, just your IDs like your social security card, a passport, and other identification papers. You'll still be using the US dollar, and everything, the products, will feel like back home. Life is also slower in the US Virgin Islands as well. You'll have that peace of mind and simplicity. You can go snorkeling when you feel like it, and will be surrounded by views of the Caribbean and the neighboring islands whenever you go. The tax rates are usually beneficial for most as well. It's called the Made in America tax haven for individuals and families. It has a 90% reduction in the personal and corporate income taxes that are paid each year. The average rate of taxation for a company on the island is just 3.37%, even though it is an American territory. The IRS actually treats the USVI as a foreign country. Also, there is not a high level of racial tension. There are a wide variety of persons living here. People generally live and work peacefully together. Interracial and intercultural couples and families are somewhat common. But the community here has some incredible people from varied nations that make up a rich expat community. Let's now look at some of the cons for the US Virgin Islands. By living in the US Virgin Islands, you're not part of a state, and your legal residence will disqualify you from voting for a presidential ticket, even if you are paying into the Social Security program and paying federal taxes. Hurricanes is something you need to seriously consider as well, being next to the warm Atlantic waters that create tropical storms that have an impact enough to wipe entire neighborhoods off of the island. You'll be dealing with significant storm surges that can cause plenty of flooding issues. Downed power lines, fallen trees, and general havoc occurs whenever one blows through. You'll need to cross your fingers every June. Isolation could also be an issue. This is caused because of the expensive nature of arriving there for family members and friends. But of course you can make friends with the locals as well. Employment can be a significant problem when you start living in St. Thomas. Outside of the tourist industry, the government, and a handful of retail outlets that have made their way to the island, there isn't much for work. The unemployment rate typically hovers around 10% in any given year. There was also Hurricane Irma that caused a lot of damage to the Virgin Islands, but it's emerging back. The storms damaged or destroyed about 18,500 homes and businesses on the islands, including multiple high-rise apartment buildings. Locals have worked to get the islands back on their feet, clearing rubble and sorting through debris. Everything is emerging newer, better, and stronger, however, with an overhaul occurring with the electrical grid and the hurricane-resilient buildings. But is ready for visitors in almost every other sector. Restaurants, shops, and beaches is either back up to 100% or pretty close to it. Mosquitoes are an issue here as well. They are smaller, faster, and they can carry serious diseases such as dengue fever. But looking at all of the pros and cons of living in the US Virgin Islands, there are some challenges, but there are some great rewards. You'll get to experience plenty of sunshine, have friendly neighbors, and experience Caribbean life without a significant investment. Well, tell me what you think of living in the US Virgin Islands in the comment section below. If you like this vlog, please don't forget to give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell for more of my coming content here. Thank you for watching my vlog. Be free, gain wealth, and travel far.